This episode of the Leap Forward podcast is brought to you by Bridge LT, leaders in conversational learning and innovation. Through AI role plays, technical simulators, and comprehensive training programs, Bridge LT is revolutionizing the future of corporate and enterprise education.
On this episode of Leap Forward, Simon Poole, Commercial Director at Citygate Automotive, discusses the importance of adaptability in a rapidly evolving industry, sharing insights into digital transformation, talent management, and the vital role of diversity in shaping the future of the automotive world. Packed with actionable advice and forward-thinking strategies for professionals at every level, this episode is a must-watch. Let's dive in. I'm delighted to welcome Simon Poole to this Bridge Leap Forward podcast. Simon, welcome.
Welcome. Hello. How are you?
I'm really well, thanks. It's
good.
Really excited to chat with you today.
I'm not sure why I'm welcoming you to your own office, but here we are.
It's good to be here.
Yes,
maybe we swap roles here.
Yeah.
So look, Simon, you've had a really interesting kind of career journey. Can you just sort of take us through it so far?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Not the most engaged school student towards the latter years. So really keen to get into the workplace. Was fortunate enough to have family in the industry. So left school at 15, just before GCSEs, right straight into an apprenticeship, small little Citroen dealership in Berkshire. Completed my apprenticeship within sort of 3 or 4 years. Realised I like working with people. So moved out of the workshop on to service reception, where spent a couple of years learning my craft. At the same sort of time, moved into management. So I was very young. I was sort of 21, 22, managing a relatively large service and body shop actually at the time. Stuck that out for 3, 4, 5 years. Just took on more and more responsibility while I was there. I just loved working with people, right? You know, it was definitely all about people and customers. Got a real buzz out of hitting targets, but mostly about people. Found that managing people, I had a flair for. Could help them on their journeys. And then met my wife, relocated, took a different job working in a consultancy, which taught me all new skills. Stood in front of senior people, teaching them how to run service departments bluntly. During that time, also deployed by different manufacturers to support different programs, whether that was, improving return on sales or different after sales metrics. So spent 2 or 3 years doing that all over the country, Aberdeen to Exeter, and a hugely steep learning curve. Wanted to settle down and start a family. So that sort of that travel lodge life wasn't for me for long. And then I joined Citygate as a group head of after sales at the time. So that we were 5 Volkswagen dealerships at the time. So I was running the after sales division. And since then I've sort of grown organically in the business. So I've gone from group after sales manager to director, then brand director, divisional director for a while. Then I was an ops director looking after the business on behalf of our CEO for a couple of years. Obviously, during all that process, I moved out of just purely after sales. I was looking after sales divisions, driving sales departments. And 2019, was asked to move on to the board and took on our commercial director's role, which is what I do today. And that is, so my role now is very, pretty much everything to do with the infrastructure of the business. So property, M&A, the other way around, M&A than property, cyber resilience, network. I'm our lead on digital systems. I've retained some operational divisions, so because I've got a flair for paint and body, I still look after that. But principally, my role is to make sure that our business is set up so that our operational team can operate and turn all the retail opportunities into sales.
Fascinating. That's real breadth of coverage there. really, really, and a great kind of journey to get you to where you are today. Tell me a little bit about Citygate.
So Citygate is now 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I joined literally 6 months after its sort of merger away from HRON. So
Mm-hmm.
our owner, Jonathan Smith, took 5 sites, five Volkswagen sites originally. We're now 24 sites. That includes Volkswagen businesses, Skoda, Cupra, Seat, Volkswagen commercial vehicle, Kia, and a Chinese brand, Aura. We employ 770 odd people. We sell 16,000 new and used vehicles a year. We have some 150,000 throughputs a year, service throughputs, and employ roughly 120 service technicians, all around the northwest London. So
Mm-hmm.
everything from sort of Chiswick, Edgware, Watford, back out to the Amersham Land, High Wycombe, Slough. And so that sort of big, sort of northeast corner of, northwest London corner of London. That's us. We dominate the market. We like to think.
Fantastic. Well, let's talk more about that market domination. How is the market? How would you describe things? Here we are, June 2024. Give us a bit of a market.
Well, I mean, listen, it's not without challenge.
Sure thing.
I think that's the Q4 2023. The used car market moved from under our feet pretty rapidly. Caught most of the industry out in terms of the revaluations. Came into Q1, that seemed to bounce back. So I think the landscape today is we're moving into a push market, in my opinion. Volume, as in volume of units. Stock is back. Our storage facilities around London are full of stock. So we've got stock. Channels are different. EV has changed dramatically in the last 6 months. If you sort of dig into the EV market numbers, there's not much retail going on today. If it's business fleet stuff, there's still a market there. But EV market retail is difficult. Used is good. Used is good. The challenge with used really is sourcing good used cars. Younger new stuff is rare. Older stuff is fine, but you have to have the prep facility in the background to cope with it. So sales is, there's opportunity. The commercial vehicle land stays the same, really. We're in London, we operate in London, so we have the last mile opportunity under our nose. The emission zone change has forced some people down a certain road, for good or for bad. That's a matter of choice, I suppose. So there's opportunity out there. There's no doubt about that. I mean, our inquiry rates in the last 3 or 4 weeks have bounced back. If we go back to Easter, inquiry was down, but it's bouncing back now. So it's about conversion rates. It's about making sure that we convert. And then in the rest of the business, service, our service departments are buoyant. We've got good levels of bookings. We've worked really hard over the last 10 years with different retention programs, so that's working well for us now. And the challenge, which we'll talk about shortly, I'm sure, is technicians' skill sets and skill gaps, and that remains a challenge for the industry, which we're all working hard to combat. But there's buoyant in service and in paint and body crash repair. It's very buoyant. Certainly in London it is, because for us the number of repairers in central London is forever decreasing. Right. Which means where we operate on the peripheral of London, the DLGs and the big insurance companies are looking to place work where they can't get it into their own shops. During the pandemic, or on the back of the pandemic, we lost a lot of painters to different industries, whether it was trains or the energy markets. But they are coming back now. They're realising where they can earn their money, and the paint and body repair sector, I think it's going through a rationalisation, as is the whole industry, right? So fewer outlets doing a better job and a bigger job. Yeah. As just a generalistic term, but certainly in paint and body, there's opportunity ahead.
Really interesting. Thank you. That's really detailed. Tell me, you mentioned there the sort of the beginning of the challenge question, I suppose, and you've sort of zeroed in on the talent piece and specifically the technicians. Tell me more about that.
Well, look, it's no secret, is it, that the industry's got a talent shortage in, let's just talk techs for a moment.
Yep.
I mean, there's a talent shortage, I think, across the whole industry, really, and that might be salesmen through to productive technicians. But technicians, is a challenge. And really, the answer is be the best employer.
Right.
Offer the best training, the best facilities. These guys, having been a technician, God, too many years ago, I dread to think, but back in the day, you wanted a workspace that was good for you. You wanted to be able to be productive. You wanted the right tooling. You wanted the right training. You wanted to be productive, and that's no different today. Technicians still put cars up on ramps. They still put them up on a ramp and they repair them. Right? It's no different in that sense. The difference is the speed at which technology is changing. Not does a year pass where a new model with a new piece of software with a new digitalization has come along, and these guys have got to keep up with that. So for me, it's about giving technicians the right environment to work within, but then also making sure you invest in them, and they will invest back in us. And I think if you're lackluster in that as a retail organization, you just get caught really quickly, because technicians know technicians and they know technicians and they all talk. So it's it's a little bit like painting the Severn Bridge. You just have to keep going. You have to be, you have to be positive in your recruitment. You have to be on point in what you pay people. You have to put them in an environment that is good for them, and you have to be mindful of what they face every day. You do all those things, you've got half a chance of retaining what you've got. And then I suppose our big success factor is onboarding apprentices. So, when I was group after sales director some 10 years ago, even then we were onboarding 40 to 50 apprentices a year. Now, when you're in that sort of number, the reality is not all those young men make it through. So at the other end, you may end up with 25, 30 that actually qualify and go on and be a fully trained sort of technician to master technician. And that's where we've done really well. So just this year, this first half year, we've had 7 third year apprentices qualify. And that will continue for us. I think we've got 37 first years on this year. And obviously it's June, so it's school year end, academic year end now. So we're about to go through another onboarding process. So, the technician conversation and the skill gap conversation is only about, you just have to work hard at it. You've got to be good at what you do. The facilities have got to be right. And then you've got to invest in their training.
And you talk about sort of young men in your sort of onboarding process, but you're very focused on also building out a diverse and inclusive kind of workforce. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we have a diversity and inclusion workforce committee, which is chaired by our managing director. It's a board level topic that we challenge ourselves with constantly. I think the reality is it's not necessarily about chasing a target for us. We want to make sure that we employ people that are right for the job. That said, diversifying the workforce can only be a good thing, right? And I think that where we've got a male heavy percentage in a certain role. So if I just take salesman, for example, generally speaking, whenever I've had an interaction with a young lady or a lady selling me something, it's been often superior. And I say that as if I'm shocked. I shouldn't be, but so we are working really hard on that point. We have 4 of our senior leaders in the business are women. Our head of HR, head of marketing, head of communication center, and so forth. So yeah, we put a lot of time and effort into making sure the diversity is there. We work in a very culturally diverse area anyway, so we are blessed with not having to work too hard. In that sense, that sort of falls in our laps. But it's a topic of conversation constantly. Yeah, it's a good one.
And how do you it's really interesting. I mean, the apprenticeship thing sounds fantastically successful. Obviously, bringing them in, and how does Citygate think about sort of retaining and growing that talent?
Well, it's well, I just leading putting the two things together. So the diversity and the apprentice conversation. So we've got three young ladies painters going through paint and body apprenticeships. And if I think about how we've gone on to retain those individuals, because a good painter is worth absolute, they are just they're gold dust. So and actually the way that we retain them is not necessarily just through pay and reward. It's actually through engagement. So we brought them into the conversation. We've taken them off the shop floor, and we've asked them to help us, help ourselves, if you like, and we've engaged with those young people, and that's I think that's ultimately what's gone on to prove dividends for us. Pay and reward is kind of an obvious one. As I guess is facilities and making sure the environment is right, but actually it's kind of beyond that. All too often I think we the industry can look upon the young people of today and not necessarily give them the credit that they deserve. Actually, when you bring them in and you give them the space to talk and give their ideas and empower them with getting them to exercise some of their ideas, you'll be amazed what you get back.
And obviously, this is a bit of a generalization, but young people living and breathing technology. How are you incorporating tech into the business, and particularly when it comes to training and development?
Well, I'm lucky enough to be lead on most of our technology. Most of that is on the back of we spent 4 or 5 years investing in our internet and our network infrastructure, and that's on the back of a cyber compromise many years ago. So we've gone on. We're in a place now where our cyber and our network is very secure, and what that does for us is that gives us the sort of the foundation and the platform to be able to build upon. So if you take it at a very simple level, if your network is fragile, you could never launch a decent VoIP service, which means that you could never go on or offer any sort of unified comm service because everything's too fragile, right? So we've built the foundation strong in the network. We're now operating and starting to operate nicely in that sort of unified comms piece. So our customer journey is evolving nicely. We're literally just about to launch some AI, some interactive stuff on our website for chat and chat bots and chat solutions, and some of that's generative as well as non. So that's quite exciting. When it comes to the learning and development aspect, that's often driven by our manufacturers. We're talking with Bridge about the LMS. So because ultimately, with learning and development and just learning in general with today's technology, it's a completely different landscape. You've got adaptive, you've got gamification. You've got immersive, interactive learning. And as I was driving up here today, I was thinking, many years ago when I was consulting, I would stand up in front of 12, 15 people, managers, and for 3 days I'd batter them over the head with the course content. And you look back now and you think, oh my God, I mean, how horrific an experience must have that been. But so then you fast forward 10 years and you think, okay, and my daughter's just gone through a process of working for Argos for a little while, and she had a week's worth of e-learnings. And it was horrific.
Right.
Standard sit down for half an hour. I mean, who wants to go through an e-learning, right? Just those things, those two examples send shivers down your spine, right? But then when you get into the idea of interactive learning, adaptive learning, gamification, these micro learning sessions, I'm all over that. And you said you checked out my LinkedIn and you realized I've just done some learning myself. And actually, what I learned from that was, as a learner myself, I want to learn when I want to learn. I want to learn. Right. I want to learn when I'm in the right space mentally. If I've got a cold on Monday, I don't want to learn, right? But if I've just gone out for a run and it's 11 o'clock at night and I'm buzzing, that's a really good time maybe for me to absorb stuff. And I want to learn in a different way to the way you want to learn. I'm very visual. Somebody else might be very analytical. And I think that's what this modern learning culture, learning software gives us. I'm not so sure the industry is quite there yet. I still see a number of our employees, colleagues going off and sitting in front of a teacher and being told what to do. And I see way too many e-learning modules coming down, whether it's regulatory, compliance led. And there is still a space for that, right?
Yep.
There's still a space for, just pushing people through a process because they've got to learn stuff. And I think when it comes to e-learnings, there is a space for that. But when it comes to, I was thinking about technician learning, I was thinking about AR, VR. And I was thinking about, I know some of the work that Bridge have got going on is very immersive. And when you see some of those sort of examples of, as a young technician being able to simulate a fault on a car and repair the car that you would never be able to simulate even in a training environment in Milton Keynes somewhere. There is a completely different flavour coming along, and I think it's great.
You're preaching to the converted there, and it's great to hear that sort of evangelical kind of view on it as well. And obviously for the recipients of that, that's what matters, right? Whether that's increased productivity or increased retention and development. I think that cost saving, the scalability side of it, I think, and also the sustainability side. And you made reference there to some to the fact that you are yourself on a lifelong learning journey. Tell me more about sort of how Citygate thinks about sort of ESG and how you're applying that to the business.
That for me, ESG, sustainability, is about board conscience. So I think it starts there. If the board have got a conscience about sustainability and ESG as a sort of a general umbrella of the conversation, then you've got half a chance as an organisation to invest where you need to invest, because let's face it, that's the elephant in the room, right? You need to spend money at it. The reason I went on the journey was because I saw, I've got teenage children, and I saw the conversation at home moving from, I'll buy from that company, that organisation, because they do the right thing, and it struck me that actually, we as an organisation need to, we need to adapt. Now there will be regulatory things that are forced upon us, right? So part of my role is to be responsible for our property, and landlords will require us to report back our carbon footprint and our energy usage, and so to a degree we're going to be forced to do stuff, and ultimately the banks will, and the financiers institutions will also essentially force upon the retail sector a change, and that will come through in quite simple terms. Loans will be more attractive if you've got a certain ESG footprint statement behind you. So there's all those kind of like must-haves and will have to haves, but I think there's some real practical stuff you can do to get ahead of the curve, and actually some of it's really good, and it's here and now, right? So some of the initiatives we've got going on, you've kind of got all the obvious ones, right? You've got solar PV, on rooftops. You've got LED lights being, popped up everywhere across the business. Sorry, I'll say this is Citygate, right? There's some sort of kind of PIR systems where lights get turned off when you're not there. But then there's some non-obvious stuff, right? So I'm responsible for our paint and body division. And for instance, there's a bakeless paint now available. Well, if you look at our gas usage across our business, our ovens, consume vast amounts of gas at high expense, right? Yep. So there's a commercial benefit to going down some of these initiatives as well. And then it really, beyond that, then it's then about small incremental change, right? It's about and this is where I think technology also helps. So if I just at a very simple level, you think about printer cartridges and printers and and ink and paper usage across the business, and everybody talks about digitalization, right? Yeah, we're digital, right? Okay, fine. But actually, are you really? Because you've probably got loads of people that fear it and they still want to press a print button. So how you can use some of the Microsoft technologies now to be able to steer people away from that that idea to print, and digital e-signatures on customers' records. There's so much that can be done to move people into a digital environment, which has another positive impact. So yeah, I mean, I could talk all day about ESG, but it's a bit of a passion, because I think that when you hear the younger generation and their psyche changing, as a dad, and as a just as a human being, you don't do the right thing, but then as a business person, you realize the narrative is changing, and you have to take your business on that change.
And how do you do that? How do you take the business on the change, and how do you kind of cascade that down through the org?
Well, I mean, I'm all about sort of blueprinting stuff to start with. So I'm a big fan of, let's take an example. Let's create a test case. Let's show people what can be done. Stakeholder engagement is huge, right?
Yep.
So board level engagement is kind of number one. You have to have the board on board. We're fortunate that we have. We've got a very engaged board when it comes to ESG. And then it's about having champions in the business. I mean, that's the key to it, really. So across our business, we've got a number of individuals that are in different roles. They're not all leaders, that really get it, and are really passionate, about their department and their footprint, and the fact that they want to do the right thing. And these people that are buried in your organization that often you don't even see there or realize that are there. It's like mobilizing the troops, and you cascade and you empower, and that's I dare I say that's probably the second part of the ingredient mixture. The recipe is identify those people and then empower them to do stuff. If you put too much bureaucracy around people, you wrap them up in decision making, protocols. Nothing gets lift off, right? Trust people. They do the right thing, generally speaking. And when they do the wrong thing, they probably only do it once. And if they do it 2 or 3 times, then maybe you should, think of bringing somebody else to the party. But generally speaking, people can be empowered on this sort of stuff, because, they're not going to go and spend £200,000 on a solar panel. They never get a lift off, but they can do the small wins. And that, for me, to sort of summarize the ESG piece, the ESG thing is all about small wins. And if we all do small wins and we all have little bits of, then the world would become a better place.
I think it's a great strategy. You talked already quite a bit about the whole concept of sort of change. You talked about sort of how consumer behavior, citing your own family in terms of what you're noticing there in terms of considerations around purchasing. Tell me a little bit about how you've seen the customer journey evolve over your kind of career, and then how are you ensuring, particularly from a sales perspective, I suppose, in a sense, how have you kind of adapted your processes to reflect that change?
Wow, how much has it changed? So, I mean, when if you think back to the mid 90s and buying a car then or selling a car then, right? I mean, hey, wow, different world, right? And not a particularly good world. I mean, maybe good for some people, but for the masses, certainly for the consumer, maybe not that great. But now we're in a regulatory heavy industry. We're loaning finance. We're selling, vehicles that are 20, 50, 100,000 pounds. This is stuff we have to take seriously. So how has the journey changed? Well, I mean, look, simplistically, you've got the regulations on top of the sales process. So we're sort of forced to slow certain parts of the process down. But I mean, it's well publicized. The consumer now walks into a showroom, 95% of the way down their decision-making process. They've done their research online. They're coming into the organization. They know what they want, generally speaking, and it's more about the soft skills and the process that we push them through or we take them through. I think what's emerging now, and there's some really good bad examples, and there's some really good examples out there, is the online journey, right? And that's, we're all kind of, we're all trying to work out how that online journey works. And I remember Volkswagen launched this sort of initiative a few years ago, Bricks and Clicks, and I still believe it's the right, sort of framework, which is, and was talking about it today with our head of technology, and that is as simple as, if we've got a customer engaged on our website going through, looking at a vehicle, even if we ask them to go through the sales process online, majority of customers will drop out because it's a fear factor, because they're not quite ready to commit, because it's 11 o'clock at night and we'll go to bed. Who knows, right? So to be able to, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, the omni-channel point, but I'm not sure the industry has really worked out yet how to run the two things in parallel. How to have a customer digitally engaged, as well as then, be able to drop in on the showroom and say, by the way, I was online last night. Oh yeah, we can see you were. Yeah, no problem, Mr. Poole. I can see actually you got your such and such a vehicle into the basket, but you didn't check out. So let's help you with that. And I think that's what's changing. And there's some technology out there now, that really assists that. So, we're just about to launch a product on our website where, if you're on a particular vehicle, and you're looking at the vehicle, a chat will come up, but the chat isn't, just there to chat, and field questions. We can turn that into an immersive conversation. So then you're there assisting the customer through the journey. And then that gives us the ability to have multi-directional conversations, so we can bring different people in onto the chat at the same time. So the answer, it's no different really. Back in the day, if you think about it, simple as this. So back in the day, as soon as the customer hit the showroom, don't let them leave. Right? They've got to buy a car. That was kind of it. Now it's about, once they're online, don't let them leave. Right? Keep them engaged, keep them informed, be there for them. And don't just stick a chatbot behind that and assume a chatbot's going to do all the heavy lifting for you. He won't, or she won't. Oh, it won't, sorry. But so be there and be blended. Because as a consumer, I want everything, right? I want to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, and how I want to do it. And as retailers, we've got to be there in all those places. We've got to be on WhatsApp. We've got to be on Facebook. We've got to be digitally available. We've got to be physically available. And we've got to be, just available to help that process along. And that I think is what's changed the most. That requirement for support in the digital world. And I think some organizations are just starting to get it. I think the technology's there now. When I say the technology, I'm talking about the chat technology I was talking about there. The ability to check out online. So the finance houses are now starting to support e-signature. And then the operational stuff that sits behind it, the logistics and the how do we get cars to customers? That's all kind of simple stuff. But the finance and the part exchange valuations, these things were difficult 3 or 4 years ago. We're in a much more tech savvy and available space now. So sorry, I've rattled on there. But
that's really great.
But I think the answer to the question is, back in the day, it was customer comes into showroom, let's get them dealt, right? Now it's you've got to have a digital presence, and it's not just about ticking a box by saying we've got a website and we've got a chat thing. It's about making sure it's all genuinely linked together and immersive and automated on some level, so that wherever the customer drops out of that process, you're there ready to help them.
I don't think you're rattling on there at all. I think it was a brilliant answer. There was a second part to my question, which is then sort of, how do you gear up your team in to kind of operate in that omni-channel world, which you've described really well?
I think the first thing is it's a different type of team. In truth. And I think that the digital and tech savvy individuals that are out there will adapt easier than those that aren't that way inclined. But I was only talking to our CEO about this last night. There is still a requirement for some salesmanship in that process, right? Because people will still want to drop out and still want to talk to somebody. And, there's been a lot of talk in the industry about the sort of the genius idea. And that's fine from a product knowledge perspective, but we still got to assist the sale. And by assisting the sale, you need to have salesmanship. So I think it's an emerging skill set, if I'm honest. I think it's quite unique. People that are digitally savvy, as well as have that sort of salesmanship and be able to bolt the whole process together with all the right soft skills and interpersonal skills. That they're not in their masses, So then we teach them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about taking, about going back to your earlier point about learning and development, and what structure do we take them through. I think this is all emerging. If I'm honest, I think a lot of this is great conversation at the moment, and it's going to be expedited. And let's face it, COVID has just put a grenade up everybody's bottom to get on with this stuff, which is great.
Yep.
And certainly for somebody that embraces all these components, digital, the physical world, the digital world, and the sustainability world, put all those things together, and you've got a good environment. So it's emerging, but I feel that so long as we keep on that path, of developing that thinking, we'll be fine. The danger is you launch a digital online sales process, you stick behind it, dare I say, a traditional sort of salesperson, and it's
a disjointed experience.
It'll be a disaster because it'll be disjointed. Conversely, if they're very technical and very tech savvy, but without those soft skills, it will equally fall. So there is a real need for some profiling of these individuals.
It's fascinating. Just on that point of skills, I suppose, in a sense, when you're looking to bring in new members into the team, into the business, what do you kind of personally look for in an individual?
Wow, it depends on the role.
Yeah,
if I'm honest.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, crikey, when back it, I suppose, I don't directly employ front of house people these days, but to be candid and blunt with you, when I did, my first thing was, do I want to go for a beer with a guy?
Yep.
Because if I do, or lady, then they're going to be somebody that's good with interpersonal skills, and that's going to be an advantage. I mean, the industry now is littered with so many different types of roles that when you're recruiting, you've got to have your head in the role. So I've just recruited somebody for our compliance, for instance, and on the face of it, you would think somebody that's in compliance needs to be very analytical, needs to understand the regulatory frameworks, needs to be probably more detailed than anything else. But actually, whilst all that's true, they also need to have a strength of character, because we put them in front of people that want to not be regulated. And they need to stand up in front of those people, right? So it's not just about detail and analytics. So you're looking for a certain individual there. I think when it comes to salesmen these days, feeding the digital element in, you're looking for somebody that's savvy enough in that world, but also understands the commercial requirements. But ultimately, at the end of the day, salesmen, sales ladies, salespeople, it's really all about interpersonal skills in a traditional sense. Technicians are, I'm slightly more freelance in what I say here because I can, because it's what I was many years ago. It takes all types. That's the answer. We need good communicators in the workshop to be able to cascade and to be able to motivate and to be able to take the young people through their apprenticeships. We also need the guys that are just happy to get their heads down and plow through work. At the end of the day, they all need to be able to, to be tech savvy and do what they do. So I'm not sure there's one answer.
No, that's a great answer.
And I think actually I think my answer probably is, not wanting to look at my notes, but it's adaptive. That's it, isn't it?
I think that's a great way of framing all of that. You need to be flexible. You and to your point, you need to always be learning, right?
Yes.
Because as you said, the thing's evolving. So,
and I think that, I think that lifelong learning point with the micro learning thing behind it, and most people what that means to, is LinkedIn is a great example of, miniature learning available at any time. I think that, for me, certainly as an individual, that kind of lifelong learning thing is, I just commit to it, because I just think the world is moving at such a pace. And there's one thing being resilient enough to keep up with the world today, and one of the ways you stay resilient is you stay informed, and you stay informed by constantly feeding yourself with knowledge.
And that brings me to my last question. So either to your former self, when you made that first step in, or someone listening to this interview, watching this interview, what one piece of advice would you give them about entering this industry?
Do you know, I get asked that question a few times actually over the years, and I've honed my answer.
Oh.
And my answer is back yourself. Back yourself, because it's a difficult industry. It's a complex industry. It's not an industry that's going to just give you a career without you earning it. It's an industry full of characters, big characters. It's an industry full of complexity. Everything from, all the stuff we talked about, digital tech, all the way through to regulatory. It's not for the faint-hearted. So back yourself, because I think if you back yourself, you've got half a chance.
Simon, thank you for your time today.
My pleasure. Lovely talking to you.